Hello, and welcome back to today's American Flyer Trains. We're on the layout today to demonstrate the 583A electromagnetic crane, both its installation and testing. 583A was sold in the A.C. Gilbert inventory from 1950 to 1953. This one, according to Doyle, is a Type 3. The base is gray, and the support structure and the legs are silver. And according to Doyle, that's what distinguished it and labeled it as a Type 3. Now, I'm also fortunate to have at the moment in the collection a 583, which was the predecessor to the 583A. 583 was in the inventory and sold between 1946 and 1949. It's pretty similar to this one. It has the boom, the green boom, or it could be gray, has the red magnet. It has a single button controller, because reversing of the rotating platform and house and boom were accomplished by a sequence reverse unit, something similar to what you see in the locomotives. No typing by Doyle was provided for the 583. Now later on I'll probably be discussing it and demonstrating it in another video because I already have it disassembled. So I thought I'd stop there and let's take a look at the inventory and the nomenclature of the 583 versus the 583A. And then we'll eventually get it back together with maybe some painting done to the 583. The reversing of the 583, that is the reversing of the rotating platform on the 583 that you see here in this video, was accomplished with a 2-button controller, not a sequence reverse unit. It was also accomplished by the fact that the field was double wound. Now this one usually has the green boom and the red magnet. So let's take a look at where the button has been located. I've installed the 2-button controller for the electromagnetic crane 583A on a side-mounted platform or shelf on the layout. Now I decided to do this for a couple of reasons, but before we get into that, just so you know how it was built, it took about 2 to 2.5 inches. I don't remember exactly, so maybe call it 2 1/4 to have ample space for a controller. And I made this one long enough that it can hold a total of 6 control buttons because I wanted to bring back to my visitors the opportunity to operate some of the operating accessories. So I'm either going to move the buttons from the main control deck here, or I'm simply going to duplicate them. This will be the only one for the electromagnetic crane. It will not have a duplicate on the control panel, but I think some of the others I will duplicate out here, and let's take a look at what those are going to be. On that same shelf will be the controller for the 715 vehicle transport car offloader that you see here, the 919 side dump car. Now I use this for barrels, don't use it for coal because I've labeled it not necessarily an offloader, but a tosser or ejection unit because it will throw coal everywhere. So I use it. It works pretty well for the barrels, especially if there's no more than 3. It offloads them very conveniently, loads them conveniently, offloads them very conveniently right here beside the barrel loader. Also controlled from this deck will be the control for the 718 mail pickup and ejection car. The control button for number 914 that's known more as the log dump car, and it'll be used over at the log loader. And in addition to the 914 log unloader, there'll be a control button there to control the log loader. This is the 787. And while we're visiting the log loader, yes, the house on top of the log loader is illuminated. That's a modification that I made. Before we discuss the position on the layout of the 583A electromagnetic crane, I want to show one modification that I made to the device. It was in collaboration and with research and partnership of other owners and others with knowledge of electromagnetic fields. I noticed that there was a lot of residual electromagnetism or magnetic field created on this magnet, which is, it turns out, from research, is very common with an electromagnetic crane in that it maintains an electromagnetic field. And what I found with this one is it would pick up some of the debris out of the bin here, the loading or deposit bin, very nicely, dump maybe 50% of it, and then leave certain pieces hanging on the magnet. So I did a little research, and I found that if a thin coat of plastic is put between the magnet and the load, it would allow the load to release more conveniently, and usually just about all of it. So what I did was I took the same Mylar that's in passenger cars, cut a circle, and applied it to the bottom of the magnet, and it seems to work very well. I've turned the frosted side in toward the magnet and the slicker side, the shiny side, away in hopes that that might aid the separation of the pieces. And it seems to work pretty well. It's only held on by just double-sided tape because this is still a proof of concept and a pilot test to see how well this is going to work. If it stays, great. There's no long-term effect of putting that on there with double-sided tape that can't be undone later. If it doesn't, I'll find some other kind of adhesive. But so far, so good. This is simply a Mylar from passenger cars, coaches, and American Flyer. So let's give it a try. Now let's talk a little bit about its position. No, you're not seeing things. It is mounted. That is, the mount or the frame for the crane is at about a 45-degree angle to the barrel loader to your right, or to the image right. Now that was done because it takes about well over a 90-degree swing on the boom to clear a gondola, just a standard American flag gondola, to get the load into the car. So this was about the best I could do, but I found out that it has double use, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. It does extend the gondola a little bit into the area of the barrel loader, which is great. You could actually load barrels at the same time that you're loading scrap metal. Now, its general position on the layout is I decided to put it in the industrial area adjacent to the barrel loader because I actually, as you'll see in just a moment, it's going to kind of partner with the barrel loading functionality. It's going to be next to the Gulf version of the oil supply depot, number 768. And then I kind of like the height of it down here in the industrial area, adjacent to the 774 floodlight tower, the 593 signal tower, and of course the 596 operating water tower. So I just really like that height. And then behind it, of course, is the freight station from Marks, freight depot from Marks. So I thought it looked like a pretty much complete industrial area with all this activity. It lent some height to the industrial area, plus one more active thing to do, in addition to barrel loading and log loading, was now loading the scrap metal. Now let's give it a test operation in putting a load of scrap metal into the gondola. So let's see what 3 passes picked up. Well, it's not bad. Got a good size load. You can actually hear the motor. As a matter of fact, it dropped a couple of washers down here. You have to be careful that you don't drop anything that spans the track when you're doing this, of course. Prevent shorts. But a pretty good size load for 3 swings. And you can actually hear the motor straining just a little bit when it picked up a full load. So I'm satisfied with it. I can get it into the gondola, and I may make adjustments later on as to its distance and positioning, but for right now, this is where I'm going to start it. A colleague in collaboration came up with an idea for letting the electromagnetic crane pick up and leave a secondary deposit on the deck of the barrel loader. And I thought that would be a really good idea. It could even be barrels, or more likely would be barrels. So I tried the barrels that came with the barrel loader. They're a little heavy. They are not magnetic, so a magnetic type surface would have to be bonded to one end, but that might make the barrels a little bit too wide to go down the trough or the slide in order to be picked up. So I took that as not a possibility. But I had these plastic barrels that came with the 1984, 1985 slot car race set. They're hollow, they're plastic, they're very lightweight. So I decided to do maybe a proof of concept with one of these. So I drove a carpet tack in the top. Now, as you know, carpet tacks are respond well to magnetism just because of what they're used for. Drove one in the top and tried picking it up. There wasn't enough magnetic surface up here. It rocked too much, and it was just too long to be able to swing around and clear the platform. So I started working on them to maybe cut them down, as you see of the one sitting on the deck right there. But I came up with this final design to take the bottom third of the barrel off, paint it, prime it, paint it, and put on a Gulf oil decal from American Flyer that was used on the HO Gulf oil tankers, not the S gauge tankers, but the HO gauge tankers. Now, in order to give it a metal surface, I simply took a small section of razor blade, carefully smoothed the edges so they wouldn't be sharp, bonded it to the barrel. It didn't add significant weight, but it certainly added a surface that was very attractive to the magnetic field. Painted both, primed everything, painted everything, and I'll probably end up dull coating it a little bit, but taking the bottom third of the barrel off seems to work pretty well. Now I need a truck. I'm still searching for the ideal truck that could hold two of these, park it in the road, have guests pick up metal scraps out of the bin, put them in the gondola, pick up the barrels out of a truck sitting in the roadway, and deposit those on the barrel loader deck or platform. It gives them two things to do. So let me demonstrate what I've got it down to doing so far. In order for this to work, of course, I had to adjust the wheel on the back of the electromagnetic crane for the perfect height when a truck was sitting on the exact opposite side from the railhead with a truck that had the barrels in it. Now, of course, as I explore some different types of trucks, I can go back and make fine adjustments using that wheel to the boom height and position to pick those up. So I'm going to see if it can swing around and pick it up. Not bad. I think you'll see that if I had a truck that could hold two of those, and this one actually has a metal surface on the top already. I just didn't like the design of the Gulf Oil emblem being that high above the center seam, but I'll leave it that way. It gives me two different barrels, two different looks for the barrels. And it does not necessitate the crane to drop the barrels from a extended height so they bounce and possibly roll over. So far so good. If I can just get an ideal truck to sit over here, maybe a stake truck or a flatbed truck, to position here, put both barrels in. And I've also already noticed that there is one truck available that I use over by the log loader that could probably hold two barrels. So I'm going to keep searching, and that way when guests arrive, I can have the bin here with metal scraps and have them pick up maybe 3 swings or loads from here, put them in the gondola, and you'll notice that some of the debris I've put in here includes wheels, rails, pieces of a erector set, a sheet metal truck, and if you have one of these and you notice that it came with these little triangular shaped shreds of metal, those pieces of metal were what were actually punched out of the beams, not these, but the other beams used in erector sets. So Gilbert, as he was known to do, is to repurpose a lot of things and use things in different places, like the beam that came off of the girder bridge for HO to make that a beam load for S gauge. He used those little tiny triangles that were punched out of erector set beams as the load. Those are fine. It can pick up a lot of those. They're flat. They don't seem to dangle as bad, but they're sharp, they're small, and they're kind of a nuisance to pick up, whereas nuts, bolts, washers of several types, small pieces of rail, small pieces of erector set, a wheel or two, an axle or two, screws, nuts, bolts, and so forth, seems to work better as a more varied load and look more like a scrapyard. So I think that's the installation that I'm going to go with for right now. Thanks for watching Dave's American Flyer Trains.